And welcome back into Open Line. I'm Chuck Long here with Kevin Kennedy from the Kennedy Law Firm. We're taking your questions, your calls, your comments. Ask the attorney all hour long. That's what we're doing. Kevin, one of our most popular guests that we have on Open Line, and I can certainly see why. You've got great advice. You've been trusted for year after year. People like to be able to call and know that they can depend on the answer.
Yes, and we love to do it. That is one of the things. It's part of who I am. You know, on the law firm, we call it "We're committed to helping people." It's not just a slogan. It is a way of life. And if you and I pulled out here and it's a terrible situation, I won't turn my back. I don't want to get you hurt, and I don't want to get me, but we're going to do something about it.
That's the key. All right, the number is on your screen. You can call with those questions and comments. 737-7587 is the number to call. We're going to go back to our phone lines right now. Hyrule is on the line with us. Hyrule, thanks for your patience. And do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Yes, I have a question. Hi, Chuck. Hi, Mr. Kennedy.
Hi, good evening. Good to hear from you.
This week in Nashville, there was a big situation that took place at the Waffle House. There was a shooting and killing, and a lot of people got hurt. And the person that did it, he was from Morton, Illinois. And he also, they said that he might have, he accused country singer Taylor Swift of stalking him.
Right.
I was wanting to know, supposedly he bought a ring for her for $14,000. If that's for real, could that go for the people that was shot and killed and hurt?
That's a good question.
Also, could it be tied into if they were at the same place, you might have had a concert, could that do something for the case? And I'll hang up and listen.
Okay. First off, you know, Chuck and I were talking a little earlier. You can just count on it. If you had to shoot someone, probably somebody's going to get sued. And so what we have here, so these guys, they go out and shoot. If they have money, if they have a home, those lawsuits are going to come. They're going to put less pendings on those homes. And they say, well, I don't care about these people. I'm just going to take them out. Well, guess what? If you've got any property, money in the bank, houses, property, stocks, bonds, they would sue you under the theory of wrongful death, that you've created these wrongful deaths, and you would be civilly liable for that.
And that's why these questions are so important, because, you know, again, a lot of times we sit out there, a situation happens. It can be something as simple as the estate and how wills are drawn up. People and families get in these, you know, disagreements all the time about that. And that's why it's always important to talk to the attorney. And we are going back to the phones right now. Joe is on the line with us. Joe, thanks for calling in. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
I have a comment.
All right, Joe.
Years back, I was working for a hospital, and there was a theft that allegedly took place, and they singled out a few of us and told us we either take a lie detector test and agree for that information to be turned over to the police, or we would be fired.
Yes.
So I went to a lawyer, and the first one I went to said they couldn't represent me, and the second one I went to said, well, the Supreme Court says you they can fire you for any reason, even if they don't like your haircut.
Yep.
All he would say to me.
Okay. Here in Tennessee, we have what's known as a employment at will, meaning that I can hire you and you work for me as long as you want to, and you can quit. I can't do anything about it. I can let you go. Now, there's some new legislation that's out when they start trying to require you to take these lie detector tests. And so we would probably research that immediately under your circumstances. Every case is different. Again, you may have signed a contract, employment contract, agreeing as a condition that you would at random take lie detector test. But as a general rule, I wouldn't want to do it, and I would come out and I would get a lawyer and I would try to find out what this whole thing is about. And You don't have to take a lie detector test. You know, one of the things I've seen with these problems with the police investigations, they come in, someone makes an allegation against you, said, will you take a lie detector test? One of my first questions is, well, that's great. Now, will these people who've made these allegations, will they take a lie detector test? And you know what the police always say? No, 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 no. And I said, well, this lady has made accusations against him. You want him to take, let's be fair. Well, of course, they never want to talk about that. And they say, well, it's not admissible in court. Well, again, many times the lawyers are trying to protect you. You know, anyone can tell a lie on you at any time. And so you have to be very sensitive, and we got to be proactive to protect ourselves. And so somebody said, come in, I want you to write this statement. Is this in my best interest or not? And you said, well, you know, you told me, Chuck, wait a minute. Chuck said, Kev, I really never told you. I want to be nice. So the best thing is to get away from that and seek legal advice.
All right, Joe, thank you so much for calling in this evening. That's a great topic, and we appreciate your call. We're going back to the lines right now. Anna is on the line with us. Anna, good evening. And do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
I've got two questions on two different subjects. If that would be okay. All right. I'll try to be quick. First one has to do with renting. I'm renting under adverse circumstances. I thought it was going to be a temporary move. It hasn't worked out that way, and I didn't anticipate the 3 management changes. And there was some sloppy record keeping on their part, and because I thought it was temporary, I was not as vigilant as I should have been.
Okay.
Going forward, when I move out, my first question is if, you know, what, if anything, I can do to use their sloppiness collectively to my advantage in terms of a security deposit, getting that back, or any other charges that might ensue. The second question is on sort of a different subject. When a judge refuses to issue an order for the purpose of denying a civil litigant the right to appeal, is a collateral attack in order?
Okay, the first one, we'll talk about it. Everyone is under your own responsibility to keep your documentation, cancel checks. Many times I use cancel checks for what purpose? Just in case we lost that or there was a misunderstanding, you can always go back to the bank and say, you know, Chuck, I did pay that deposit. It's $1,000. Here's my, so again, they could have sloppy record keeping. They say, no, we only thought it was $600. Well, again, you have the necessity to provide and prove. So it's kind of like this, one of the old sayings, if you're doing something wrong and people speak evil of you, then correct it. And if they speak evil of you and it's true, then laugh it off. So what I'm telling you to do is good record keeping. Now, let's go back to the next. And can you use that against them? Obviously, if they can't prove their case, they have a problem. Normal business records, the law requires those people to keep those normal business. And if they don't, then you got a good shot that it will not stand up in court. Back to your next question. When a judge rules, you have a right to appeal just about everything. And then once that decision is appealed, then the Court of Appeals can say, we agree, we disagree, we agree in part, we disagree in part. So they could send it back to the trial court. But when we have judges, as a general rule, when he stands on this, and then, you know, when you go to the Supreme Court, they can just deny it. You apply for a certiorari. And they don't have to hear the case. And if they don't think there's enough merit, they just merely decline.
All right, so we appreciate you calling, Anna. Again, great questions, and it's something that everybody can kind of hear and, you know, ascertain and learn from. So that's terrific. Back to the lines right now. Again, the phone's getting busy. If you do have that question or comment, make sure you get on the line with us, 737-7587. And Erica is on the line with us. Erica, do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Yes, I do. I have a question. My husband was at the Hill Detention Center in Nashville, Tennessee.
All right.
And he, the floor was wet from the ceiling was leaking because it was raining.
Yes.
And he slipped and he fell and he hit his head. And they took him to the hospital and he had a mild concussion. So I was wondering, I've been trying to find a lawyer that would take the case, but I can't seem to find one that would take the case.
Well, first off, if he's incarcerated, they're under a duty of care to try to provide a safe environment. The question is, was that water so openly in display that he assumed the risk by walking through that, and was he contributorily negligent in that accident? So it gets down to witnesses. Was there a little sign over there and says, hey, wet floors? If they didn't have it, maybe they took on a little more liability. Just because you fall on someone's property is not absolute liability. They have to be the approximate cause of that injury, their negligence, and then there has to be damages.
All right, great advice. So, Erica, thanks for the call. Thanks for sharing that with us. Joe is on the line with us. Joe's calling back. Joe, do you have a follow-up? You're here on Open Line.
Yes, I do.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
I went to a third lawyer and told him what my problem was with my employer, and he said he brought it out. They better not. And then he gave me that same thing about the Supreme Court.
Yep.
So then, that's all he would talk to me about. I called another law firm, and some woman answered, and I asked if they could represent me, and she said no. And she said, but what was it you wanted to ask us about? I said, you're not going to represent me. You don't need to know, do you? Well, I thought might be something we had on the table.
Yeah.
So then I went back to work. One of the lawyers had already called the administrator of the hospital.
Yes.
And ratted on me.
Oh my. Well, you know, the truth of the matter, that's a violation. You know, when you talk to people, it's supposed to be in confidence. You know, we take that very, very seriously. That's one of the great things about in America. I see our rights being whittled away all the time. The attorney-client privilege. And if you and even myself, if I go to a lawyer, I want to talk openly I want to talk privately. And that privilege continues on. You know, this thing we've seen on with President Trump, where they came in and they seized, the FBI seizes all his files. Well, golly, if you had a file, they just took that. What happened to your rights if I had a file? That's a real problem. And so I'm extremely sensitive. Lawyers have to keep the confidences of their clients. And we always preach that, teach that from support staff to all the lawyers.
All right, so Joe, thanks for calling back.
Yes.
We appreciate the call. We're going back to the lines right now, and William is on the line with us. William, good evening, and do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Yes, my question is, in America here, we have more laws. We have police, lawyers, and when individuals, somebody like me, call a police or a lawyer or go to court, your case is not important as other person. And that is very frustrating because you have to fight. You cannot get a lawyer because you don't have enough money. And then we, American people, paying taxes so that the government, people working for the government supposed to represent people like me.
Yes.
Not a corporation. And that one is very, very bad. And I think it needs to change. 10 years from now, America is going to be the worst country in the world.
Well, and I know that it seems frustrating in a lot of cases.
Wow, yes. Now, on criminal cases, if you cannot afford a lawyer, the courts must appoint you a lawyer. And we have that. That's why we have the public defender. And then when there's a conflict, there may be multiple defendants, then the court would appoint a private lawyer paid by the state of Tennessee. You don't really get all your choices, and those guys are really overbooked. You can understand that. They've got hundreds of cases. It's always best to try to get your own law, but at least in the state of Tennessee, we don't really have a problem in the criminal arena. And again, in the civil arena, we have the Legal Services of Middle Tennessee. They do a marvelous job. The lawyers, they have fundraisers, and they are supposed to help people in your situation. And so I'm very sensitive to you, and thank you for calling. We won't know injustice. The court should be open to every citizen forever, where we are not intimidated by whoever's in power, and we can go in and tell our side of the story. And the halls of justice scream out in rage when there is injustice for anyone. I'll say this. If you don't stand up for those people and someone takes them away, one day you'll have no one to stand up for you. They say strong people stand up for themselves and stronger stand up for others. You really struck a note with me when you said that, and thank you for your comments.
Absolutely, well said. So we do appreciate your call, William. We are going to take a break. We've got a lot of folks on the line with us. Please hang on those lines. We'll get to those calls as soon as we come back from the break. You're watching Open Line.